are getting added. The central government is pushing for greenhouse construction by giving subsidies. The reason is twofold. One is obviously growing in greenhouse means you're using natural resources optimally. You're not abusing the soil. You're not pumping it with urea. Most greenhouse farmers use drip irrigation, which means your water is optimally used. You're not doing flood irrigation, right? And if you look at the consumer side of the ecosystem, our consumption pattern is changing. What was heavily cereals based consumption had moved to milk about 20-25 years back, is now moved to fruits and vegetables and processed food, right? So with population becoming better in terms of disposable income, with awareness to what it means to have a nutritionally well-balanced meal, irrespective of honestly the strata of the society, the average basket of consumption in India has changed, with fruits and vegetables being consumed, right? So, and therefore, and obviously horticulture being more remunerative than growing staples, the government also wanted to sort of rebalance the way land was being used for agriculture holistically. And one of the levers that the government was using was giving subsidy to greenhouses so that farmers could construct greenhouses. And what has happened is, especially farmers who are in and around a large demand center, which could be Bangalore, which could be Hyderabad, Mumbai, NCR, have built greenhouses. So literally within 100 to 120 kilometers of these 5-6 large consumption cities, you have India's majority of the greenhouses. Now, when we spoke to the farmer, the problem was threefold, right? The farmer did not know what to grow. What I'm telling sounds very, very simplistic, but the honest reality is that because a farmer has different stakeholders whispering into his ears. A seed company would have come up with a new seed variant for that year. They'll come and tell, use this seed. You know, the yield is 2 times better than the previous one. You can make a lot of money. He visits a market. The market guy will tell, this year, capsicum in Hosur has been sown in large quantities. Price will fall. You don't grow, right? A neighboring farmer will tell something. So he has so many unstructured advice falling on his ears. Largely, he does not know what to grow. The second thing is, his yield and productivity are not optimal. Again, the reason is a lot of the actions that a farmer takes on the field, honestly, is not very scientific. It is dependent on the market, right? Market mein price zyada hai, so yes, he will spend money on the right inputs to get the right yield, take care of the plant along the entire life cycle. Again, I'm making it sound very simplistic, but majority of the farmers honestly are like this, right? So a lot of the actions that need to be taken, which is for the betterment of the crop, which in turn is for the betterment of the farmer, is not taken, and a lot of shortcuts are done in the farm. And a farmer instinctively thinks, "Arey, maine itna paisa kharch kiya hai greenhouse ke liye. I tried to grow capsicum, yield nahi aa raha hai," right? So it is not a right investment. So that's how majority of the greenhouse farmers are today. The last challenge is a farmer who knows what to grow and also maybe who knows how to grow very rarely has 365 days market access, which means whenever he harvests, he has to have a buyer. And in this world where we are operating, rarely that commitment is given by any buyer for that matter. In spite of all the modern retails of the world having collection centers in practically every village, right? Nobody is given us 100% commitment ki jab tu harvest karega, I'll purchase, right? So every time he harvests, he has to find a buyer. Market dynamics are there. Price can be up and down. He has to transport it to the market. Grade B is not purchased. He has to bring it back. He has to figure out what to do with that. So when we did a dipstick assessment, about 30% of a farmer's produce was going dump, which means he was selling at whatever price. He was just unable to sell because by the way, all of these are perishable. It's not like onion, potato, which you can keep in a cold storage and take it out 6 months later. He has to find a buyer 1 day later. Second day, the produce is actually gone because of the perishable nature, right? So about 30% of the produce was going dump. About 30% of the produce, he was barely able to recover cost. Only in the balance 40%, there was a chance that, he found a buyer with a good price and he was able to make money. But at an aggregate level, that 40% was not covering all of his costs. So when we traveled around Karnataka and met farmers, honestly, majority of the greenhouses were lying idle or they were completely underutilized. So that's when we sort of said, here is a demand which is becoming organized, which is becoming mature, which is, which is now knowledgeable in the sense wants to know where the produce is coming from. Is it organic? Is it chemical free? Is it residue free? Is it hydroponic? Right? Their awareness is going up. They are looking at a particular kind of category or variant of the produce, but unfortunately, the supply side is still completely unorganized, scattered. So when we, as I said, when we started, our vision was we will grow all of the produce on our own, right? We will build all the farms. In a sense, we wanted to be like India's largest farmer, if you will, right? We said it is still possible, but we'll be like India's largest virtual farmer, right? So at our back end, we will be powered by all of these dark farms, right? Which are farmers who have invested in greenhouse but are struggling on one of the dimensions or all of the dimensions that I mentioned of not knowing what to grow, how to grow, and where to sell to. We said we own the demand. Demand is today smarter. We can convince the demand to pay a better price for consistency, to pay a better price for quality, to pay a better price for a cleaner variety of the produce. And at the same time, we can also be very fair to a farmer, right? By taking this demand to them and with our agronomist intervention, help them grow it in a way where their yields and productivities are much better. They're able to sell all the produce and it's not just one cycle, right? Because we deal with a cross section of demand, we deal with multiple SKUs on the demand side. We always, let's say you're a farmer in our network, in about 2 weeks time, your production cycle is coming to an end. You don't have to worry what you should grow next, because I know what demand I have. I know where my production gaps are today. I'll already start discussing with you, hey, you've grown capsicum now. I suggest you do not grow English cucumber because it's not good for the soil. Here is a set of 20 other crops that you can grow. So what was a problem for a farmer? Every cycle of not knowing what to grow, how to grow, where to sell to. It's almost like today we are telling, not in an arrogant or a bombastic way, but we are telling the farmer like we are your best bet to ensure that your land is utilized 365 days a year by growing a crop which has market relevance and by growing it in a quality standard which the market ascribes to or desires. So that's where we are today, in the sense that, so that's how we started telling, okay, we don't have to build all our farms. We'll work with farmers. We built a team of agronomists. We started working with processors like Jubilant. We started working with modern retail like More, Nature's Basket. We started adding a lot of fine dining outlets. So we consciously sort of took the B2B route, because B2B brings with it scale immediately. Like you work with a Swiggy, which has 30, 40 kitchens, right? Your demand will do a step up increase. So that scale demand visibility helped us scale the supply and, validate all of what I'm telling. So over 6 to 9 months, which was practically all of 2018, we said, can we translate the value that we are telling orally to a farmer by actually demonstrating better yield for him, better productivity? So then we sort of, and again, with multiple crops, we could not solve for all crops in one go. We took crops like capsicum, we took crops like English cucumber, we took the most basic of crop like a spinach, we took crops like lettuces, we took a cross section of crops. We sort of understood from the farmer what was the benchmark yield that he was getting, or what is the benchmark yield in general farmers are getting. And then we started doing our intervention, which is standardizing the seed to use, pre-preparation of the land, what sort of nutrients must be used, how do you maintain the crop at every stage, and then obviously finally output in terms of per kg or per acre, what were they getting. So we've been able to increase the farmer's yield anywhere, depending on the crop, from about 1.5 times of what yield he was getting earlier to, in some cases, actually 3 times to 4 times the yield. So the good thing that we saw is the same farmer growing the same crops across cycles has consistently seen better yield. It's a factor of two things. Obviously,
Could you just cite that with an example? What you just said.
sorry?
Could you just cite that
Yeah.
with an example? What you just said, yeah.
So like, for example, English cucumber, right? So theoretically, a seed company says you need to get 4 kgs per plant, right? So the average yield, right? If you look at a yearly average or something, is about 2 kgs per plant, right? And when we asked the farmers around, there were farmers who had said 1.5. There were farmers who said 2.5. So broadly, 2.5 is what they were getting, right? Uh, so our farmers started off by getting 3, and then we've also had farmers who hit 4.5 kgs and even up to 5 kgs per plant, right? So when we go and speak to a farmer, by the way, it's not that they'll immediately believe what we are telling, right? Like, we may sound just like any other aggregator coming from the city telling, you know, I'll help you grow, I'll buy all of your produce, etc. So the fact that they take 1 or 2 cycles to really get convinced that we are adding value, right? So our agronomists visit the farm regularly. We have on the field agronomists who pretty much visit the farm if required daily or once in 2 days, 3 days, depending on crop, depending on the farmer, etc. We pick up the produce from the farm, right? Unlike a collection center where they go and drop, we pick up the produce from the farm. And secondly, obviously, we pay them on time, right? So over time, when they see this is happening diligently and not just sporadically or out of chance, you know, a farmer also instinctively trusts when we tell him to do something. So the fact that the same farmer growing cucumber started seeing incremental yield improvement and hit around 4 or whatever, 4.5 kgs, right? It's a validation of both farmer being more disciplined in terms of what needs to be done in the farm and doing that. And also from a farmer perspective, it's a validation of what we had promised him and actually delivering that, right? So initially we we took the help of the local horticulture departments of the government or the drip irrigation companies or the seed companies to identify where are these greenhouse farmers, right? Obviously you can drive around and find, but a more organic approach was to sort of leverage the other stakeholders in the ecosystem to identify. And then after that, we started seeing a traction where farmers started referring other farmers into the network. Hey, you know, here's a company called Clover. This is how they work, you know, largely hassle-free, will help you. You know, you don't have to worry about. All you'll have to do is just follow what instructions they are telling, ensure water is available, nutrient is available, labor is available. But otherwise, everything else is largely sort of taken care by the company. So that's how the journey began. On the demand side, we added all of these various channels, as we call them: modern trade, general trade, hotels, restaurants, processors. And then we went deeper into the supply side ecosystem of scaling, standardizing the agronomy practices, because, you know, it's not, there's no one size fits all, right? Like the soil is different in Mandya versus a Chikballapur versus somewhere else, right? Seasons are different. So which is the best seed for this kind of soil or for, let's say, this kind of crop, right? So standardizing all of the agronomy practice and across multiple crops that we were doing is what we pretty much did, I would say, from the middle of 2018 to the middle of 2019. What we started seeing is demand. Like, majority of our customers are multi-city customers, right? Like a Swiggy is there in 5-6 cities, likewise Fresh Menu, likewise Eat Fit, likewise the modern retail that we were working with. When they saw over time the kind of consistency, professionalism, the quality, the reliability that we brought with, they started telling, hey, when are you expanding into Hyderabad or a Mumbai? Because the problem there is the same. It's not that somebody has solved for supply there. Even those markets have aggregators, have intermediaries. It's not that there's a scaled organized supply available there. So we took the chance end of 2018 to